Hi everyone, CR Gaming here. Today I'm back with the Antonov 225. A week ago I made a video when it first came out, and I said once I actually fly the plane a little more and get used to it, I'll make another video that's a little more accurate. So as you can see, the nose is already up today, and I do have some cargo in there. I'm going to show you how to load the cargo first. So once we go to the fly pad inside, you can click on the payload section here. Actually the ground section, and the ground section allows you to choose from a bunch of different types of payload that you can put on the plane. If you do go with this generic cargo, that's the only one that you can select the actual weights. So if I go to the payload screen, see I can select what weight I want for that cargo and hit apply load. And as you can see, I'm actually over max the takeoff weight with the fuel I have on board. So I'm going to hit ground. I'm actually just going to take the boiler. I hit load cargo, and as you can see on payload now I can't adjust these. They're going to be set automatically. So if I try and adjust this slider here, this slider won't adjust. Hit apply load. These are my current weights right up here. Now as we go through this, if you click on the ground, I can close the main door here. Now that does take a little bit of time to close and open. If I go over to options, you can see I have the nose door movement set to fast. Even on fast, it still takes a few minutes. So also in this menu, I can set the cockpit language to English. That's going to set the GPS and some other screens to English, but the cockpit is still in Cyrillic. Or, all the text and everything around the cockpit is still in the foreign language. I have it set to Imperial on my weights, but again, a lot of the gauges are still metric, because it is a metric plane. And my autopilot altitude window, this is setting the altitude on the autopilot if you want it to move by hundreds of meters at a time or a single meter. I normally have it set to 100. So, next is the weather screen. I have a flight programmed in here from KLAX to KSEA. And right now the door is closing. That's why my fly pad is moving off here. So there are some camera glitches that happen when the door opens and closes. So one of the things you're going to need a lot on this plane is the converter. The converter is going to allow you to type in kilograms and get pounds, pounds and get kilograms, meters and get feet, vice versa, speed and knots, kilometers per hour. We almost never use miles per hour on the plane, but you can convert to that too. Pressure conversions. Basically, this is a page that will allow you to configure the plane as you need. If air traffic control says, to fly at 30,000 feet, you just type in 30,000 here, and it's going to spit out that that's 9,144 meters. So you can set the autopilot to 9,144, and you're good to go. Now, it does say aircraft control disabled when inputting text. Until you click somewhere else, it won't allow you to move around or do anything else. So let's head back outside and see if the door is closed yet. As you can see, it's still closing. So we're going to take a quick break here while that's happening. Okay, so back in the cockpit, when you first start up the plane, you are going to see this init 43 seconds, and it's going to keep counting down. Basically, just wait 43 seconds before you start taking off. There'll be a similar message on the GPS as well when you first start up the plane. Now, I'm not going to go through the cold and dark startup today because that will take a long time, and I want to show you how to fly the plane. There is a very detailed checklist here, though, if you want to do the cold and start from scratch. So at this point, we have our payload on. Our plane is ready to go. When we actually want to put the fuel in, that's not on that little iPad screen. The fuel is going to be right here, so we can adjust the fuel as necessary right here. And we still have 5 seconds remaining before we can take off. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to set this dial right here to 360. That's about 250 knots. And that's just going to be a good autopilot speed to get the plane off the ground. So I'm just going to increase that a little bit more here. We do already have our GPS set up. The GPS is a standard Garmin GPS. There's tons of tutorials online about that. But basically, that got pre-set up from the world screen on the map, before I started the flight. So right now, as you can see, this says throttle control in English. So all these error messages are going to be in English as long as we have that set on the fly pad. I'm also going to set my altitude here to about 3,000 meters to start. That's going to be around 10,000 feet. Now, if we look at our instrumentation here, we have tons of different instruments. This is going to be our speed in kilometers per hour. This little blue mark, that's the speed we want to be before we rotate. We want to make sure we at least get to that speed. If not, we're really going to have trouble getting the plane off the ground. Here's going to be our heading indicator. We do have a heading bug there. This is going to be used for our autopilot. As you can see on the right-hand side, there's that heading bug there that's moving. Now, to move that, I have it set to one of my controllers, but the proper way to move it is this red knob right here. As you can see, it's difficult to see the front while you're moving this red knob. That's why I have it set to a controller. We also have altitude right here. This is going to be in meters. This is our vertical speed indicator. Now, this is in feet. So that's vertical 500, 1,000, 2,000. Descending 500, 1,000, 2,000. So some of the stuff is in metric, some of the stuff is in feet. As we move over here, we have a regular ADI like you'd see on a normal American plane. This is in knots, and this is in feet. We also have an altimeter in feet. So you can see we have an altimeter in meters and altimeter in feet. So you have both in most cases. This is going to be our radar altimeter. This is in meters, saying how far you are above the ground. Now notice we're sitting on the ground and it's not at zero. So just keep that in mind. This is a tall plane, and therefore you're going to hit the ground before the radar altimeter says zero. Alrighty. So I think we're almost ready to take off here. I'm going to turn off the parking brake, and I'm going to hold the regular brakes. That's this red knob right here. Alrighty. And I'm going to set my flaps to full flaps. This plane can take off at full flaps. It can take off at 1 or 2 notches less than full flaps, but you want a lot of flap on this plane. It is a lot of weight to take off. Okay. So I'm going to gradually increase my throttles while holding the brakes. Now, because it's generally a very heavy plane, if it's fully loaded, we want to make sure that we actually get up to max thrust before we release the brakes. So you see this is at 97. We're going to wait for that to get almost to 100 before we release the brakes. Because we don't want to be waiting for the engine to spool up as we go down the runway. 99 is fine. Oh, there it goes, 100. So this left screen right here is what my throttles are set at. And then this screen right here is going to be the percentage of max thrust I have. So I'm actually, thrusting a little over at the moment at 101. Alrighty. So as you can see, my needle's coming up. Now I'm not that heavy right now. I'm not at max takeoff weight because I didn't take a full load of fuel, because I'm just going to turn around and land. So we're at the blue mark right now, rotate. And as you can see, because I didn't take on much fuel, we rotated pretty easily. I'm going to put my gear up. I'm going to put my flaps up a notch, and I'm going to turn on the auto throttle here. That's going to try and keep my speed at this 363. Now keep in mind we have a little barber pole here. That's the speed that we should not exceed at our current flap setting. So as we get closer to that, I'm going to put my flaps up another notch, and you see that barber pole moved up. Now, I'm actually having a lot of trouble keeping the nose up. The nose keeps wanting to sink on me, so I'm going to move the trim up just a little bit. Now, in this plane, the trim is very sensitive, so a little bit goes a long way. Okay. So since we're still below 10,000 feet, I'm going to try and keep it below 250 knots. As you can see, that 360 is right around... Well, we're not actually at the speed. That's odd, because I thought 360 was... Maybe we have our nose up too high or not getting proper airspeed? That's interesting, because 360 is generally right around 250 knots, but you're not seeing that right here. Let me check my conversion chart. Maybe I have the wrong number here. Oh, 460 is what I should be going. Okay. See, this is a problem on this plane. If you don't get your speeds right, you're going to fall out of the sky. So, clearly I was not going fast enough. Okay, so we're just going to raise that autopilot up here to 460. Now, as you can see, the needle for my autopilot, my auto throttle, is higher than the barber pole. So I need to put my flaps up before I get there. At this point, I'm going fast enough I can put my flaps all the way up. So as you can see, the metric conversions are very important. You get those wrong, and you're going to have a bad day with your plane falling out of the sky, especially when you're at max weight, which I'm not right now. So at this point, I'm going to hit the ER button. That's pretty much your main autopilot button. We have a couple different options on the autopilot. Right now, it's just keeping wings level and holding the pitch that I had. If I want to adjust the pitch, I can hit this H3 button. And this is in meters again, even though this is in feet. So as I scroll this up, the plane is going to climb a little faster. You see we have about 500 in the middle, and you're looking, it's a 13 or 100 or so over here. That's because the meters conversion there. So that's one way to control your pitch on the plane. Another way is using the VEL. This is basically going to climb as fast as possible or descend as fast as possible, depending on what you have set in your meters here. And so as you can see, it's increasing my engines to max power. And it's going to climb. I'm climbing at 4,000 feet per second, so that's quite a steep climb at the moment. It's only doing that because of how light I am. I can also turn off the auto throttle and pull my throttles back manually to, around 105. That's a better climb setting. I don't want to burn up my engines here. And you see it's going to slow my ascent just a little bit. Also, as you see here, it says throttle control. That's because I'm no longer on auto throttle. So right now, I'm still climbing. It's going to climb as fast as it can while maintaining that speed I set here, which is 448. Now, if I increase this speed, it's going to slow my climb until I can reach that speed again. As you see, my climb is now slowing down. So one thing I wanted to mention about the throttles. You have 6 engines here. You only need 2 throttles. Throttle number 1 is these 3 engines. And throttle number 4 is these 3. That's how they split it up. So you actually don't need 4 throttle levers, and it's currently not set up to use 6, even if you have 6. I believe that's coming out in SU12. You'll actually be able to control all 6 of them separately, but until then, it's just 3 and 3 on engines 1 controller and engines 4 controller. So now that we're in the air, it's going to automatically stop my climb when I get to the 3,000 meters, which is what I have set here. And you see that's going to be around 10,000 feet, and we're approaching the 3,000 meters now. Once that happens, it's going to select this high, which I believe it's already selected. High is basically just going to keep it at whatever I have set here. It's basically going to maintain my current altitude. Max is going to be the same as VEL, except Max will allow it to climb using Mach instead of regular airspeed. So as you get higher up, that's the button you're going to click instead of VEL. So now we're going to go over this little thing right here. We have a couple different options here. Course 1, Course 2, VOR 1, VOR 2. You can't really see it, but it's the Navig and Approach. So these are what you're telling the plane to follow. Right now, we're just on horizon, wings level, and it's not keeping a course at all. If I click on PC, it is now going to follow this heading bug right here. So you see my plane's turning. I'm just going to put it back there. And it's going to follow that heading bug all day because I have it selected on course 1. Now another option is to have it on the Navig. That's going to follow my GPS. But as you see, there's no pink line right now. That's because we've flown too far off course. So I can actually use my course control to find the course and intercept it. Or I can hit direct to my next waypoint. And now it's got a nice turn there. So I'm going to set this to Navig and hit PC again. And as you see, my plane is going to be turning to go on course. So it's going to follow that magenta line now. And you can see your autopilot status down here. It's holding my altitude, AP nav on, course stabilization's on. So we're actually overspeeding quite a bit because I forgot to put the auto throttle back on. So I'm going to hit the auto throttle button. As you see, my engines are spooling back. But we're way about ahead of the barber pole here, so we're actually in an overspeed configuration at this altitude. So if I wanted to continue to climb more, I would just set my altitude right here. And then I would either use the pitch control right here, or I would hit VEL again, which is just going to climb as fast as possible. Now, when you hit VEL, it selects your current airspeed up here. Obviously, I don't want to climb going that fast, so I'm going to reduce my current airspeed to be less than the barber pole at least. And now the plane is going to continue on course because we have PC selected, and it's going to continue to climb as fast as it can up to 4,000 feet. Now, since I have auto throttle on, it's going to use all the engine power it can to get up to, 4,000 meters, not 4,000 feet. It's going to use all the power it has to climb up to 4,000 meters. As you can see, the plane is climbing again. So if we look outside, you can see it has a slight pitch up, and we're making that right-hand turn to stay on course for the GPS. Now, one of the things we want to check out, we do have an error message right here, and that says gear lever in neutral, or not neutral, something to do. Basically, what you need to do is click the gear level down to here, and that error is going to go away. You're not clicking it all the way down, just one notch, and you see now we don't have any error up here. So a couple other things to go over. All your navigation stuff is up here. If you want to use the approach hold on the plane, you can click this to the approach right here once you have the ILS in, and it'll follow that. And then you can actually hit this VRTCL button, and that will actually approach you down towards the runway. Now, this plane is only equipped with Category 1 ILS. It will not do an auto land, so make sure you turn the autopilot and auto throttle off before you land. That's in the manual. Some of the other things we want to look at are the lighting. Okay, so this is your lighting control right here. Middle is off. Up is landing lights. Down is your taxi lights on this one. So as you see, there's 3 positions here. That's middle position. That's up. So now our landing lights are off. We also have a couple different switches for beacons, strobes, and some other lighting, like the logo light. I've been having trouble seeing the strobes during the day, even when they're on, and the beacons when they're on during the day. But that's all your lighting control right there. Over here is all your pilot controls. If you want to turn on that fan, it's one of these switches. Yep, there we go. You have the TCAS and a bunch of other different things like that over here. Let me get back in the pilot seat here. Over here you got your wipers. On the right hand side we have our trim switches over here. Those are the important things you're going to need to know. Over here is your speed brake, so your air brakes. Over here is your flaps. This C button is supposed to lock your throttles, but it doesn't seem to actually do that, because I can still move my throttles. Let me turn that off again. More here. Okay. Then we also have, this is your reversers, which really doesn't seem to do anything aside from pop up when you turn your reversers on. But obviously it's not putting it in reverse right now. So at this point, I'm going to mess with my GPS, and we're going to get a course back to LAX because I'm sure you guys don't want to fly around with me all day, and I'll show you how to land this plane. So at this point, we've slowed to 320 kilometers per hour. We're at 800 meters, which is just around 2,600 feet, which is what our approach chart says. And we're flying on GPS to line up for the runway. Our next stop is going to be 1,800 feet, which will be 550 meters. Now, we also wanted to look at our approach charts to determine our landing speed. We're at about 1.1 million right now. That puts us at about 500,000 kilograms. According to this chart, we need to be about 277 knots for 550,000 kilograms. This plane does like to stall if you go too slow, so I'm going to keep that extra speed, even though we're a little bit below the 550. I'm going to land at about 277. Now, as we do slow down, we do need to make sure our flaps are out. If we slow down too quickly and our flaps aren't out, this plane will stall, and it's very hard to recover from a stall in this plane. So we're going to look up here and make sure our approach frequencies are put in. 109.90, 109.90. If we click this on and off, you can see that the ILS is coming up over here. IMKZ, Category 1, so it already has the ILS frequency. So at this point, we should be able to click on to approach and click PC. Now, if it doesn't start a slight right turn to get us lined up for the runway, I may have to do that manually. It doesn't appear to want to do that, so I am going to select it back to course. And turn it to the right a little bit and hit PC. Because we're actually a little bit too far left. There's the runways. We're going to turn a bit more right though. At this point, we're passing the times waypoint, so we need to drop to about 500 meters. So we're going to hit that and hit VEL. As you can see, my throttles are going to immediately drop. I'm going to set this to 300 at this point. I do have my flaps completely down. I'm going to drop my gear at this point. I'm going to start my left turn to get back on course here. Okay, I'm going to try using approach one more time. If it doesn't work, we're just going to fly the plane manually. I'm also going to hit this VR TCL button. That should control my pitch right down to the runway. It doesn't always work. I've had like 50-50 on success with that. So at this point, I've dropped my gear. But we're in a almost stall configuration right now. As you see, it brought my throttles all the way up. So we're having trouble keeping in the air right now. So I got to get my nose down. And it's bringing my throttles back. So we just got to be careful about that. I'm turning my autopilot back on. Okay, so it has not grabbed the glide slope. I'm going to take it over at this point and fly in manually. Probably because we almost stalled there. If you see that nose start coming up and it throwing the throttles all the way up and losing speed, that's when you know you have a problem. So right now I'm still using my auto throttle, but I'm going to turn that off pretty soon. I'm going to set it for 177. My gear is down. My flaps are full. And as you can see, the ER button's off, so the autopilot is completely off aside from auto throttle. At this point, I'm going to turn the auto throttle off as well. So I'm watching my speed now. I still keep the auto throttle bug on there at a speed that I want to land at, so I can just keep an eye on. I'm a little bit low at this point, so I'm going to give myself some throttle. Got to climb. Almost. Alright, that should be good. I'm going to reduce my throttle. So we're a little low still. As you can see, the poppies are all red. So not my best landing. So now at this point, we want to start looking at this vertical speed indicator right here. And we want to look at our radar altimeter here. So I'm just going to flare slightly, cut my throttles. And there we go, we're on the ground. I put my spoilers out. I'm going to pull back on reverse thrust. I haven't even touched the brakes yet. I'm going to start braking here. Okay, reverse thrust off. And you see this little reverser handle popped up here. Well, better than the landing on my last video, but not perfect. Came in a little bit too low. So that's pretty much the basics of it here. Unfortunately, we didn't get the ILS to work perfectly, but that's probably because we didn't get lined up well enough, early enough, and then we also had a stall configuration as we were approaching. So you just got to be really careful about that stall, especially when you're heavy at this kind of weight. This plane stalls really easily. So if anything, you want to keep your speeds up a little bit until the very end. Make sure you're on that descent before you actually drop your speeds. And if you see those engines rev up like they did, that means you're below your auto throttle setting, and make sure you get that nose down, because the autopilot will fight the auto throttle. If you're below your assigned altitude that you have the autopilot set to, the autopilot's going to keep trying to climb even though you're at stall speeds. And so the auto throttle is going to rev up the engines to max, but you're still going to stall if the plane keeps trying to climb. So when you see that happen, you definitely want to turn off the autopilot and get that nose pointed down so you can get your airspeed back. I've crashed on landing several times due to that exact problem. So just be careful with those speeds. Make sure if you see you're dropping below your speed too far that you correct it before it gets worse, because the autopilot will hurt you. So that's pretty much how you fly this plane. With a little more practice, you can do better than I can. But that's pretty much everything you need to know. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments. Have a great day.